Hello. Okay, let's get started here, and we're out here in Mitzpe Yericho. Let's make sure the camera is set, and we are going to be talking about the incident that they've said had happened over Shabbat, where they said that some Jews stoned Palestinian family as they were driving on the road. And let's see if let's examine some truth to the matter while we play some golf out here in beautiful Mitzpe Yericho. And let's see, not a bad shot. Okay, we got to get our form better. But let's see if this makes any sense. If you can really assume that this happened. I'll tell you the first thing that obviously strikes me as odd about this is you don't find Jews throwing rocks that often. Yes, there are incidences, and there's thousands of YouTube videos, a lot of them fraudulent and fake, by the way. But you find a lot of these. The rock throwing incidences usually, first of all, they're never rocks, they're boulders, and generally it's Palestinian Arabs throwing them, not Jews for the most part. So the first thing that strikes you odd is that this isn't the MO, this isn't the way that Jews generally act. We don't throw rocks, we don't stone people generally, we don't stand on the side of the road throwing rocks. That's the first thing that seems strange about this story. The second thing that causes me to question the story is that it occurred on a Friday night. Friday night is Shabbat, and on our Shabbat, for observant Jews, Shabbat observant Jews know this as just a basic. Rocks are forbidden to be picked up and moved. Yes, everybody will talk about how in the ultra-Orthodox communities in Mea Shearim, sometimes you find if people are driving on Shabbat through neighborhoods, they'll throw rocks at them. But that's like little kids. You don't find adults, for the most part, picking up rocks and throwing because they know Jewish law. They know the halacha that it's asur and it's forbidden to throw rocks. So the combination of these two different factors automatically causes somebody to sit there and say, wait a minute, I got to be a little speculative here. This doesn't make too much sense. So right off the bat, where I'm questioning how this makes any sense. This isn't how Israeli settlers act for the most part. We don't throw rocks at passing cars. Question number two is, how could it occur on a Friday night when generally settlers are usually Shabbat observant Jews, and in this area where this supposedly occurred, there were Shabbat observant Jews, so it would be strange that they picked up rocks. And for the most part, when cars are passing by and their rocks are thrown at them, like that happened to my own daughter, generally it's not Jews throwing the rocks, it's Palestinian Arabs. Now, there's no evidence anyway. What's the only evidence that's been released to the public? The evidence that's been released to the public is that the driver, the Arab husband driver, whose wife was unfortunately killed by these rocks, said that he heard the people throwing the rocks speaking Hebrew. So let's imagine this, that from a distance, somebody is standing on a mountain like this and a passing road like that one, and we're throwing rocks. And what we're screaming as loud as we can in Hebrew, and the driver who's being pelted by rocks to the extent where rocks they could kill is cognizant enough to hear Hebrew being spoken, it seems a little far-fetched to me. I have a theory, and again, I have no evidence, and it's purely speculative, but I have a theory that these were the same Palestinian Arabs that are always throwing rocks at passing cars. They're generally just usually aiming for Jewish cars. And they hit one of their own, whether it was accidentally or on purpose, but they hit one of their own. That's my theory. What's interesting is that the Israeli Hebrew press this morning, even some of the same newspapers like Haaretz, didn't write in their headlines that it was a Jew that did it. They wrote that an Arab family was killed by people throwing rocks. When they translated it into English, or all the English press, they said that supposedly it was Jewish settlers that did it. That's pretty strange. It means almost that the newspapers were aiming for an American Western crowd and wanted to place it on Jews. But there's no real evidence that says that this was Jews that did this. Of course, the evidence doesn't really matter. The facts don't really matter in our partisan world anymore, because the only thing that's going to matter are people have already made their minds up, right? If the verdict comes in and the police do an investigation and they find out that that the Jews, that it wasn't Jews and it was really Palestinians. Well, no one's going to accept that. The United Nations is not going to accept that. The United Nations representative in Israel already condemned Israeli settlers for doing this based on zero evidence and essentially just the English headlines that he read in the morning. So they're not going to believe that. They're going to say that it was an inside affair and the Israeli police don't really investigate their own and this is a cover-up. And for those of us that are pro-Israel, we're going to sit there and say, wait a minute, how could this really work? There's all these questions based on the evidence. So unless there's like clear video evidence of this happening that's convincing beyond a reasonable doubt, this situation is never going to come to a conclusion. So that's my take on it. Again, now, if it is that Jews did this, it would be horrible and they deserve to be condemned and there's no excuse and they should receive every single punishment that every other terrorist and murderer receives. But I'm very, very speculative, and I don't believe that this was Jews that did it. Just because there's no evidence that points to the fact that Jews that did this. Just because an Arab died doesn't mean that Jews are the ones that killed him. Arabs kill Arabs all the time. So I'm not a believer of the fact that this was Jews that did it. Again, if the evidence shows that I'm wrong, then I'll admit that I'm wrong and I'll say that those people should be punished just as anybody else should be punished. But until then, I don't buy it. That's my take on it. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. By the way, just to show you behind me, I don't know if you frequently watch these videos when I come out here and play golf, but this housing project behind us here in Mitzpe Yericho is doing amazing. You can see that that one building is almost completely finished. It's even got the shades on its windows. The windows are in. The inside of the building is being worked on now. And hey, Avi Lieberman. So those are. By the way, Avi Lieberman is coming in to do a special performance for the government press office. He's the #1 requested comedian here in Israel. It's pretty impressive. And anyway, so that's going to have 9 units inside. Those are 9 apartments. The others there's 33 altogether. So the others will be split into these buildings, which are slowly getting their walls. And now you can see all the construction vehicles up there. They're building the roads up here. So it's amazing. You're watching building. I'm not going to boast too much, but my wife is a city council member, and she is aggressively, that's a nice shot, aggressively building out here. And it's really amazing. You're looking at, Shimon asks, what are we looking at here? You're looking at Mitzpe Yericho. This is where I live. You guys got to visit. How can you be on this Facebook page not know where we're looking at? This is the view from my house. I have my own personal driving range, and it's absolutely beautiful out here. It's like 70 degrees, sunny. This is like the nicest time of the year. We're in Midbar Yehuda in the desert. This is on the way to the Dead Sea, and it's just the nicest, most beautiful place in the entire world out here. And thanks for joining. So I don't like long videos. But so you can, if you missed what I've said before, you can just play it back in a minute. I'll post this. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. But I wanted to give a little sanity to the disturbing headlines that we see and basically understand what's happening. Okay. Shalom.